When you know the final score, it makes all the difference in how to deal with crises in your life. In this episode, I'm going to address how to remain calm amid all this climate change hoopla that's going on. So get ready. I hope to give you insights that maybe you haven't had before regarding this hot topic, climate change. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been helping many thousands of people for the last 48 years optimize their assets, not just financial assets, but all three dimensions of what I call authentic wealth, and not just the money, but your faith, your beliefs, your family, your wisdom, your knowledge, and so forth. This is why we call this channel three-dimensional wealth. Now, I have noticed for a long time that there are certain agendas where government and people who are environmentalists in particular, they get on a bandwagon talking about climate change, global warming, Al Gore, and the like. And so I'm going to give you my take on how we need to be responsible and accountable for the planet. But when you know the final score, you'll be able to deal with this with a majesty of calmness, as William George Jordan explains in his book by that title, which he wrote over 115 years ago. So get ready. I'm going to share with you my take on how to remain calm among all this hoopla. So, just so that we're clear, I believe we should all be environmentally responsible. We should not pollute. We should do our share to keep our planet green, vibrant, alive. But sometimes we go so far on a tangent based upon special interest groups who are trying to get millions and billions of dollars, taxpayers' money, allocated to their causes. And we see this. A lot of times people may be oblivious to this. But, Al Gore, he came out with the motion picture and Inconvenient Truth and so forth. And he talks about global warming and carbon credits and so forth. And sometimes it amuses me because sometimes they buy carbon credits and they burn more gas and have big ATVs and private jets and what have you. I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just saying, okay. So what's the truth behind this climate change hoopla? My take is this: as I've studied sort of the history of the earth and true real science, I've noticed that the earth, as created, goes through cycles, okay? And we have cycles where the earth is warming up and then cooling down by minor degrees, okay? And this has just been a fact. And so sometimes you get arguments, we have global warming, and then we might be in this era where it's cooling. And so, people get all upset and they think that because the oceans are going to rise an inch in the next 50 years, that everything's going to be underwater and so forth. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be responsible. I'm saying, wait a minute here. Who's in charge? Now, we need to do our part. Don't get me wrong. But see, the earth recycles a lot of things on its own. In another episode on this very channel, I talk about how when we burn fossil fuels, it's actually been proven. Matt Riddle, who did an episode years ago about how by burning fossil fuels, it actually has made the planet greener. And people go, what? Because of the carbon, it actually nourishes plants and vegetation, and we've actually had more trees or green on planet Earth since the burning of fossil fuels, and then the vegetation deteriorates and so forth and goes down, and what does it do? It comes back as oil again someday. This is all part of how the Earth is designed and was created. But we have all kinds of different sources of energy, and I talked about this in another episode: the sun, the wind. But even every single atom has in it inherent energy. They're called electrons. And I have actually seen in labs electrons being lined up end to end like negative to positive batteries, where you're getting milliamps that will power hearing aids and pacemakers, but cell phones, and in the future, electric cars, where you will not have any emissions. and you'll be able to drive a car 300 miles and stop for 17 minutes and let the electrons realign themselves, and you'll be good to go another 300 miles. But see, we fight wars over where the holes in the ground are punched to extract petroleum. And then we have government agendas that talk about scarcity, and we close off pipelines here because of an environmental cause. But then we're forced to then buy oil from the OPEC nations, and then we have to go here. And then John Kerry says we will not have coal plants here in America anymore. We're going to have to go to this. But China is actually building coal plants. And so where does all this come out in the end? Well, let me share with you a little story that will help you explain my take. Years ago, I was speaking in Washington, D.C., and I was on a plane as I left, and I sat down next to this wonderful lady. She had just attended this Al Gore global warming conference, and she was just upset. And she was so uptight, and she was trying to tell me about how the world was going to, crumble into nothing in less than a decade, the end of the world. And you've heard these people. And she was frustrated because she couldn't get me upset. She was upset because I wouldn't get upset and buy into this. And she finally said, how can you be so calm when this world is falling apart? And so here's the answer I gave her. I said, years ago, my alma mater where I went to college was BYU. And back in 1980, I had graduated from going to school and I was out working. And BYU, my alma mater, was playing in the Holiday Bowl, SMU, and it was played in San Diego at Jack Murphy Stadium. And they later named it the Miracle Bowl. And I was actually conducting a Christmas banquet at the time. I had 130 people, and they were listening on their radios because many of them, that was their alma mater. And I said at the beginning of the banquet, do not tell me the score. They were shocked because I said, I have this new device, and it was about this big, and it's recording the game at my house on these big tapes. It was a VCR. And I'm going to go home and rewind the game and watch it after this banquet is over. And they went, whoa. Well, anyway, this was the game where BYU was down 45-25 with less than 5 minutes to go. And Jim McMahon was the quarterback, and one of his favorite receivers was Clay Brown. And this is where Jim McMahon, as tenacious as he was, he went and played for the Chicago Bears. And he made 3 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. He made one, and then with 2 minutes to go, he made another. I think they did an onside kick and so forth. But with like 3 seconds left, he threw a Hail Mary pass to Clay Brown, and he was surrounded by defenders, but he came down with a football. And then they kicked the extra point, and BYU won SMU 46-45. They made 3 touchdowns in less than 5 minutes. It's one of the greatest comebacks ever recorded. You can Google it and see that. So it was called the Miracle Bowl. Well, as we're getting ready to leave the banquet, somebody comes in from the parking lot and goes, you won't believe it! BYU just made 3 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. They just won 46-45. And I go, thanks. I knew the final score. I told him not to tell me. Well, I went home and I still rewound it on my VCR. I still watched it, but I watched the game with a totally different demeanor. Why? Because I knew what the final score was. I knew who was going to win. Was it still entertaining? Yes. Was it still frustrating? Yes. Was it still like, oh no, I hope you can do this. And, it was still entertaining. It was frustrating, but I had this majesty of calmness because I knew what the final score was. I knew who was going to win. And the lady goes, what's your point? I said, well, I want to be responsible and accountable, but I know who's in charge of this planet. I know what the final score is, and I know how we're going to win this whole thing and how we'll conquer pollution because I know the final score. And she goes, how do you know that? I said, well, I'm a religious person, and I gave her some scriptures that she could maybe read in the good book and so forth. And, it's interesting because I've been asked that question many times. Doug, how can you be so calm when the world is so topsy-turvy? And it doesn't mean it isn't entertaining and frustrating as I see things play out. But I also know who's in charge and the final score. So I'll leave it at that. And if this intrigues you, I would recommend that you don't waste your time and energy too much on worrying things that don't matter at the end of the day. Give your time and energy worrying about the things that do matter at the end of the day, that you can control, rather than spending trillions of dollars when there are a lot of countries in this world that are doing the exact opposite that we're doing. We're not making headway doing what a lot of special interest groups want our taxpayer dollars to go to. And if this is resonating, I would recommend that you claim a free copy of this book, Entitlement, Abolition. Now, this is my 10th book. It's been flying off of our warehouse shelves. And so if you go to entitlementabolitionbook.com and contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling, I'll cover the rest of that, and I'll pay for the book and fire out a free copy to you. There's also options there to listen and learn, watch and learn. This is 200 pages. There's even an 18-hour master class that you can invest in. But there's also options there for various educational events. One of my favorite that I love to teach as a retirement planning specialist, so you'll have a majesty of calmness during your golden years, is called Retire by Design. And so when you go in, be sure and take advantage of a discount to attend that virtual workshop, which we hold on a regular basis. So here's to you and your brighter future, and how to be calm amid this world where everybody's getting riled up over things. You do your part, but also rely on a higher power who's actually in control, and you will have that peace that surpasses all understanding.